In the previous episode of this mini-series, I went over how the Uvalde shooting was a psyop or false flag to provoke the American people to push for further gun control legislation. In this second episode, we're gonna unravel how the Highland Park shooting was in fact another psyop lie, and how removing the right to bear arms can lead to tyranny within our own nation.
Being the mass shooting at the 4th of July parade there in Highland Park, Illinois, and our person of interest, they've named him as Robert 𝗂𝗂𝘂𝘀𝘁. So man, there's just so many mysterious, highly questionable details surrounding this event, and big surprise, as seems to happen every single time with one of these mass shootings, the shooter was known to law enforcement beforehand. Law enforcement had actually previously visited Robert 𝗂𝗂𝘂𝘀𝘁's home twice. Once because I think he was threatening a family member with a knife or something like that. And so yes, he was most definitely known to law enforcement beforehand.
If law enforcement had previously visited Robert 𝗂𝗂𝘂𝘀𝘁's home for threatening to kill his family and others, why wasn't he arrested right in the spot? Let's take this short clip from The Sun that was aired in 2019 as an example as to what a real confrontation would have been if a teenager threatens to hurt a group of people.
I, Dalton Barnhart, vow to bring my father's M15 to school and kill 7 people. And Falcon Warrior 920? Who's that? Yeah. Go ahead and turn around. Put your hands behind your back. He's under arrest currently for making a threat to cause a mass shooting / active terrorism.
But he's just a little kid playing a video game.
And all these kids keep getting arrested. And that's why the FBI and the local law enforcement is spending so much time. Because how do we know he's not going to be the kid from Parkland? He's not going to be the next kid, the kid that shot up Sandy Hook. We don't know that. There's a Florida state statute that says you cannot make a written threat to cause a mass shooting, act, or kill or harm anybody else. He made the charge. He's going to face the consequences.
This video clip tells us two things. Either A, the police were clearly irresponsible for not arresting 𝗂𝗂𝘂𝘀𝘁 on the first place. Or B, this confrontation never actually took place and it's only being told to us as if it's real, in order for the globalists to push their mass shooting story.
And then also, they're saying he used an assault rifle, a quote high-powered assault rifle that he quote legally obtained. Yes, they really want you to think he legally obtained it, so that way they can roll out more laws to further restriction, because, oh, even these guns that people legally obtained can be used in these mass shootings, etc., etc. So, for a 22-year-old to climb up on a rooftop with a ladder, put a bunch of women's clothing on, shoot a half dozen people, and then crawl down, evade police for a while, nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. For them to pull off these events with the logistics and the tactics necessary to do them, you have to ask yourself the common sense question: was there anybody else involved or assisting these individuals in doing these mass shootings? Curious video taken from his social media of him in an FBI hat. Could have been a joke, okay? Doesn't mean he was FBI or handled by the FBI or anything like that. Could have just been a joke, but could have been sort of a joke hiding in plain sight as well, right?
Coincidentally, right after the arrest of Robert 𝗂𝗂𝘂𝘀𝘁, the FBI and ATF shockingly happened to be the agencies that raided 𝗂𝗂𝘂𝘀𝘁's home. The story looks so exaggerated to the point where the FBI literally brought a whole tank to his home.
Was he groomed, whether knowingly or unknowingly to him, to get into these sort of ideologies, so then he would be easier to manage by whatever handlers? Could have been FBI, CIA, Mossad, who knows? And now I want to talk about real quick the 47 angle. So this is a post I found very interesting. It says here, 𝗂𝗂𝘂𝘀𝘁 is a fetishist for Hitman. Hitman is a video game and a movie series depicting a cloned and brainwashed rogue government agent, ID number 47, who turned against the system that created him. 𝗂𝗂𝘂𝘀𝘁 went so far as to tattoo his face with the Hitman's ID number, 47, as you can see there. And like we looked at earlier, 𝗂𝗂𝘂𝘀𝘁𝘁 also had 47 those posts on his Twitter account or his fan club account, 4747. I think the car, his getaway car, even had 47 plastered all over it as well.
And he did this shooting on the 4th of July, 7/4. And he killed 7 people, injured 40. I mean, what are the odds that not only does he have a 47 tattooed on his face, that he commits this atrocity on the 4th of July? I mean, he could have planned that. But to kill 7 people and injure 40, I mean, wow, what are the odds?
So much still a mystery, including why July 4th.
He had some type of affinity towards the number 4 and 7, and inverse was 7/4.
I mean, it's just almost like it's the truth in plain sight right here. And it's way too coincidental. His father ran for mayor of Highland Park, but lost in 2019 because his dad was into politics, and then maybe this guy was targeted for checking off all the boxes of being a targeted individual that they wanted.
So let's go ahead and take a look at the shooting footage, because the first thing I do is I go look at the shooting footage and see if there's anyone actually being shot, or if you can see any evidence of bullets whizzing by or hitting anything in the background. Hold up, wait a minute. That sounded like a recording of gunfire. That didn't even sound like gunfire. That sounded like a recording coming out of like a speaker. And each shot just sounded just like the last, like it was a recording. These guys walking around, what are these, security or police officers right here? I mean, they're nonchalantly just gonna like ride around on a bike during an active shooter situation. You're just gonna go waltzing around, riding your little bike around, right? You're not gonna be taking cover. So I find it hard to believe that these cops are completely unfazed by this supposed gunfire.
You have the 33 in the back, and people say, oh, just another coincidence. And by the way, this is just a SUV. Now take a look here. Besides that, you got this fire truck, again with the number 33, prominently displayed, of course. Pulls out his cell phone and starts recording. Now take a look here. Oh yeah, no worries. He has his cell phone out and he's filming for this stage drill. Then I'll just go frame by frame.
Again, 5 people killed, 19
There's
others.
That smile. There's a smile. The signature smile for the fake event. Smiling. Here you go again. There he is. Smiling right with this guy here.
To large groups, but also encouraging folks to get off the street.
There he is. Smiling right with this guy here. With the smiling faces.
FBI teams ushered crying children to safety. In that same street.
Yeah, I got a little bit of a close-up here. The smiling faces once again.
FBI teams.
This one here in the back.
Ushered crying children to safety.
Well, look at that. Look at the smiles. Wow. And a police officer, it almost looks like some kind of assault rifle, and they're like hiding, like protecting themselves. But what about the person filming it? Are they bulletproof? So the cameraman's bulletproof. But these 2 cops, they have to stand behind this protective barrier.
This footage that was aired in Fox News was filmed by a kid while at the 4th of July parade. As the audio plays, you will hear the kid jokingly laugh about how he filmed gunshots for the first time.
We know that on the scene, shoes were left behind. And let's just watch this for a second. You'll see people start running as that gunfire is then fired off.
I just recorded.
This clearly tells us that even the people running were unfazed and confused on whether there were any actual gunshots fired.
So I think you have a combination of crisis actors being used, a whole team of crisis actors, and you have some real people mixed in there who are just running in the confusion. And so I don't see any evidence of any bullets hitting anything, let alone any people.
The last thing before we go tonight, remembering lives stolen. And you know the drill. We have done this far too many times before. And you know the drill. We have done this far too many times before. And you know the drill.
You remember David from the horrible, tragic event in Parkland. David is a hero, an activist who recently went to the White House. Today I brought my late grandfather's cufflinks with me to the White House and shook the president's hand. Both my grandparents, WW2 in Vietnam, and my father were vets. So we're supposed to believe, as he doesn't mention anything about Freemasonry, of course, because this is what they do. This is the middle finger in society's face. I don't know, maybe it's his favorite football team. Maybe it's the World War II or Vietnam, some type of thing from there. No, this is a Freemason badge. And if you remember, when all these things went down in that specific event with David Hogg, I talked about Freemasonry. There was actually somebody who was interviewed right in front of a Masonic lodge. That's how it works. Usually you'll find these places really close by.
Why was the shooter visited 39 times by local law enforcement, but never placed on a watch list? Why was his extensive school discipline not compiled and then presented to the school board for total expulsion from the schools? Why was the FBI first to respond when the school is so close to the police department and an officer with a radio was supposedly on campus? How did CNN have so many kids in place to echo their exact verbiage and focus on the actual weapon and not the shooter? Why isn't the alleged United States Secret Service involvement in a public school being examined? Who is this reoccurring student that has family in the FBI? Why has the entire CNN narrative been to attack the Second Amendment when at least 3 government institutions, possibly 5 if you count DFACS, failed miserably to help the mentally ill? Why has the school district decided to demolish this building like they did at Sandy Hook if their narrative is true and correct? Why not allow the forensics to be published and to be explored completely?
He also put out a thing because he's pretending like he doesn't know what it is and he's not a part of it. He says, I guess if I have to become a Freemason to wear the cufflinks, I'll get to work. So, he pretends to misspell it.
You guys were talking about how, you think the Vatican or the Knights of Malta are really at the top of this, global power structure pyramid, I guess. Based on my research, that's actually totally wrong. If you look at who controls the media, if you look at who controls all the banks, what group of people control American politics, guys, it's the Jews. It's not the Vatican, it's not the Catholics. It's the Jews that control everything.
We need a moratorium, perhaps, on gun sales. Who will say on this network or any other network in the next few days, it's time to repeal the Second Amendment? Oh, you can't say that. Well, why not?
Cold, hard facts the anti-gun forces can no longer escape. Armed robberies have skyrocketed, up 69%. Assaults involving guns rose 28%. Gun murders increased 19%. And a new phenomenon, home invasions jumped 21%.
In his book Deadly Deception at Port Arthur by military operations expert Joe Viles, he provides proof that Martin Bryan was used as a patsy and was falsely accused as being the shooter who killed 35 people and left 21 others wounded at the town of Tasmania, Port Arthur in April 28, 1996. The Australian mainstream media on the day of the massacre aired a fake video to the entire nation that supposedly showed Martin Bryan brutally shooting the innocent victims. The footage was passed as legitimate evidence in court despite having no proof of fingerprints, no gunshot residues, no blood, and no DNA swaps. To this day, court documents of the event are sealed from the public under national security. Martin Bryan was charged guilty and put in prison for 35 life sentences without possibility of parole. Bryan's mother and other eyewitnesses had testified on his behalf that he could have not been responsible for the massacre because of his no military experience and low IQ test of 66, the thinking level of 11-year-old. Evidence obtained by police showed that the gunman had an Israeli commando model rifle Kar-15. Joe Viles is of the opinion that the shooter was a Mossad agent. This false flag event became the pretext for Australian Prime Minister and pro-Zionist John Howard's gun reform laws. 650,000 guns and rifles were confiscated and destroyed to rubbles.
Why today I thought it was very important that we speak to Craig Kelly, a member of the Australian Parliament. Craig, am I overstating any of this? Are we really looking at what the tyrannical grip of a nation can lead to?
Many of our state parliaments have been closed down, and we have these tyrannical medical bureaucrats that have effectively taken control and are locking people in their homes. The schools are closed.
The former New South Wales Premier 𝗔𝘂𝗴𝘂𝘀𝘁 resigned on October 1 subject to corruption charges and, according to other political parties, was being manipulated by pharmaceutical companies to push inoculations.
She's being directed by a lobbyist in Sydney who's being paid by AstraZeneca and by Pfizer tens of millions of dollars to get these policies through to make sure the vaccine is pushed. That's why. You asked the question, I gave you the answer, and that's my personal knowledge.
We have to acknowledge when evidence changes. So my message to everyone is disregard anything we said about 2 doses. It's 3 doses or more.
We will be looking at what contact tracing looks like in the New World Order.
If you make the judgment to not get vaccinated, you won't wait out the virus, because the virus will be here for a long time. And your only protection against it is being vaccinated. Then we're going to get into booster issue, so it won't be your first and second dose, it'll be have you had your third.
And that's just the way it is. We've got to accept that this is the new world order.
When it comes to vaccines in our bodies, we must always have access to informed consent and freedom of choice. In August 2020, Prime Minister Scott Morrison said, "It's not going to be compulsory to have the vaccine."
Remembering, we do not have a mandatory vaccination policy in this country. We do not have that. We are not proposing to have that. That is not changing.
On Monday, 28th of June 2021, he went back on his word and stated that it will be mandatory for all aged care workers to have the vaccine.
We have agreed to mandate vaccination to have at least 1 dose by mid-September 2021 of all residential aged care workforce.
Queensland police officers have been issued a blunt ultimatum. Take the jab within 2 weeks or face suspension without pay. The move has outraged some serving and former officers. A new police union is even being contemplated to fight the vaccine mandate.
Tonight I'm speaking to this Parliament's therapeutic response to COVID-19 and its horrific medical harm and loss of life in that response. COVID vaccine injuries are hidden behind anonymous government data, while COVID virus supposed harm is splashed across prime time. The very least we can do for the victims of COVID vaccines is to say their names. Victims like 𝗔𝘂𝗴𝘂𝘀𝘁, a healthy and vibrant 23-year-old studying at Griffith University to become a vet while working as a horse strapper. Caitlin dropped dead at work of a heart attack following her second Pfizer shot. Her death was recorded as asthma, a condition Caitlin has never had. Reginald Lynn Shearer, a formerly healthy, fit and active man who quickly went downhill and passed away from effects that began after receiving the AstraZeneca vaccine. Daniel Perkins, a 36-year-old healthy father from Albion Park, who died of a heart attack in his sleep following his second Pfizer injection. Douglas James Roberts died after taking AstraZeneca. His family are concerned that his GP didn't warn him of the side effects of the vaccine. In other words, no informed consent was obtained.
We actually have Australian troops have been ordered out on our borders. Imagine American troops that wouldn't allow people from Florida to enter into Georgia unless they produced some document that they had been injected with one of these so-called COVID vaccines. People are distressed. People are prevented from going to work. They're locked down in their houses. Protests are outlawed. We saw on the streets of Melbourne only a few days ago a protest against the government. And they had, the first time I've ever seen in my nation, they had police dressed up in full riot gear with actually firing rubber bullets and projectiles into the crowd, into an unarmed crowd. This is something that you would expect to see in despotic regimes in South America. We see it here in the streets of Australia today.
Is this state-sponsored terrorism?
State-sponsored terrorism, just like the others were. Just like the World Trade Center bombing 1 and 2. It's all orchestrated, and it's going to be more terrorism because the easiest way to get the American people to not just beg for martial law, but demand it of their official. When they're scared enough, they'll give up everything to be made safe.